All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to adQ&A Live episode 7. Today, we are talking about leading and lagging indicators. So I'm actually going to walk you through a spreadsheet with some sample data and kind of explain what I mean by those things. And most importantly, what can you actually do with these concepts and how can you allow these to help you make decisions with less data. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hide this right here, and we're going to bring up the document here. All right, cool. So you should now be seeing my face down here, and you should see the doc. All right, so what do I mean by leading and lagging indicators? So let's say, for the sake of argument, that you sell something relatively expensive. Let's say vacations, right? You're a travel broker, right? And travel agency. And let's say that your revenue per sale basically of a trip is somewhere on the order of $600 or $700, right? And let's say that this is your current data, right? You have spent $9,000, you've generated 3,000 clicks, 600 leads, 30 purchases, right? So your click to lead is 20%, your lead to purchase is 5%, here's your cost per click, $3, your cost per lead, and your cost per purchase, right? So really, your lagging indicators here are your purchases and your cost per purchase. There's a lot of things that have to happen in the funnel above that in order to back out to the number of purchases or the cost per purchase that you're trying to hit, right? So your leading indicators in this case are things like your click volume and your cost per click, and your lead volume and your cost per lead, right? If those things are at the right levels, then your cost per purchase should back out to where you want it to be. So let's consider this sort of historical data. This is obviously just sample data. This is not a real client. This is just for make-believe and for demonstration purposes. So let's say, for the sake of argument, that, again, we're making something like a $600 revenue per purchase. We want to keep these margins high. We're willing to tolerate up to, let's call it a $350 cost per purchase. And so we need to, well, we want to raise the bar, right? In an ideal world, we'd like to get this cost per purchase down even lower, maybe 250, 270, something like that, right? So what do? Well, we could spend a lot of money and try to generate a statistically significant volume of purchases, right? But unless the cost per purchase is dramatically lower, you can see how that test would get pretty expensive, right? If we want to generate even 10 purchases at this cost per purchase, it would be $3,000. That's a lot of money for a test. I mean, that's a third as much as we've spent already. So how can we use some of these leading indicators then to figure out, to essentially make decisions, smart decisions with even less data? So let's take a look at some test data. Let's say, for the sake of argument, that we run a new audience, right? We found maybe a new behavioral segment, or maybe a new geographical region, or new partner category, or whatever it is. We found a new segment that we want to test. So here's the test data, right? We generated 120 clicks. Our click to lead percent was a little bit lower. Our click to lead percent was a little bit lower, and we didn't generate any purchases yet, right? So, and our cost per click went up a little bit to $3.15 instead of $3. And so we know our cost per lead, we know our cost per click, but because we haven't generated any purchases yet, where do we go from here? First off, well, that's not really statistically significant on purchases, right? We don't have any yet, so it's hard to say what the cost per purchase is. It can't be calculated. But we can tell that some of the leading indicators are not quite as good as we would hope, right? First of all, our click to lead percent is down. So that is to say, for a given volume of clicks, a smaller proportion of them are actually turning into leads, which doesn't bode well. On top of that, we know that at the top of the funnel, our cost per click is a little bit higher than it was before as well. So that's resulting in a cost per lead, which is a little bit over $2 higher. But the question is, what would that back out to in terms of cost per purchase? Well, again, we can't calculate it right now because we don't have any purchases yet. But what we can do here is we can make some assumptions. What we can do is we could say, well, let's assume that the lead to purchase percent is the same as it has been historically, right, for this test. So what would that do? At this point, what we would do is we would say, okay, let's take the number of leads and let's multiply it by our lead to purchase percentage, historical, which was 5%, right? And I'm rounding here. This was, I think, 1.1, but I've rounded it down to just one purchase, right? So that means that our cost per purchase is 378, right? So that was a relatively inexpensive test. You know, if the lead to purchase was significantly higher than our historical, chances are good we would have probably generated a purchase already. But there can be scenarios where, as we talked about in the attribution window, because this is a larger ticket price for this purchase, there can sometimes be a bit of decision-making time that's involved there. So this is not the kind of thing that somebody's going to see, an ad for this in a checkout line at the grocery store, and they're going to go, oh yeah, sure, it's only 600 bucks, whatever, I'll just buy it right now, right? They're going to take some time to think about it. So they might need to see the ad, multiple times. They might need to click through, maybe they need to come through another channel, right? So they may not make this purchase right away. But knowing what you already know about historical performance, you can use that data to the leading indicators to model out what those lags should look like, right? And that allows you to be a little bit more nimble, a little bit more tactical with your tests. You don't need to generate a high volume of purchases in order to say, conclusively what that cost per purchase can be. You can make some assumptions. It's not going to give you an airtight, unambiguous, concrete, yes, this is exactly what the cost per purchase would be, but it's a close enough approximation that you can use it for testing purposes, right? And just the key in this point is to make sure that you get sufficient lead volume to be able to, use that, right? So for instance, if you had only generated, let's say 20 clicks, right, then that would only be 4 leads, right? And obviously that's not a whole lot of leads to apply your historical lead to purchase to, right? 5% of 4 is going to be some infinitesimally small number. So you do still need to drive a decent number of leads, but the point remains that generating 120 clicks or 22 leads is significantly cheaper than generating 10 or 20 or 15 purchases. So that's kind of the basic principle here, and you can apply this. This particular scenario has clicks and leads and purchases. You could do the same thing if you didn't have a lead and it was just a click or maybe an add to cart and a purchase. So that's a common one for e-com advertisers is we'll use add to cart as sort of a proxy, right? On a long enough time frame, as a percentage of total add to carts, what percentage of people are then later completing a purchase, right? So instead of trying to get 20 purchases for a given test, I could try to go for something like 20 add to carts, knowing that those should convert to purchases somewhere approximately close to my historical, add to cart to purchase rate, right? So this is probably a quick one, and let me just check and make sure nobody has any questions in the chat. Doesn't look like anybody does. So yeah, just a super quick one, super quick model. If anybody's interested, let me know. I can throw the link to this. Nothing proprietary here or super secret sauce, but I'm happy to throw the link to this in the description if anybody's interested. Cool. Well, as usual, thank you for watching. I'm Nick Sinitra. This is adQ&A Live, and tune in next time.